Welcome everyone to the Squire Patton Boggs podcast on National Coming Out Day. I'm Steve Ward, partner here in London. I head the funds team. I'm a gay man, and with me I have Max Vincent-Brown and Royce Clemente. I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Max, I don't know if you want to go first.
Sure thing. So I'm Max. I'm a new joiner paralegal in the corporate team in the Leeds office, and I'm also a gay man. Royce?
Yeah, so I'm Royce. I'm a paralegal in the business immigration team in London, and yeah, I'm also a gay man, and I've been at the firm for just under 2 years now.
Great. So thanks, guys, for joining. So today, as part of National Coming Out Day, we want to have a bit of a discussion about, I suppose, our experiences of coming out, both on a personal and kind of professional basis, and have provide some tips for allies and also for those who are in the process of coming out. Now, we've had a couple of previous discussions on this, and actually one of the points that Max raised was the idea that you don't really just come out once, you come out multiple times. First, I suppose, to your friends and family, but then also going into law and coming out to your colleagues and also to your clients. Max, I don't know if you want to add anything in terms of your experiences there, or the idea of the kind of multiple comings out that we do as LGBT people.
Yeah, of course. So like you said earlier to me, well, to both of us, Stephen, you came out quite early, about 17. I came out at 16 to my dad, and then I didn't really think, obviously back then, I'll be coming out probably like every year something else happens, doesn't it? So whether it's then college, so it's a new place, then university, then joining a job. So here we are, like 6 years later or whatever, and then you're still coming out. And yeah, so when you join a job, it's a bit crazy because you constantly come out, whether it's to fellow paralegals, to partners in the team. I know you mentioned it earlier, Stephen, about being sort of in corporate or banking, whatever. It's very the norm is heteronormative rather than anything else, and the norm is a cis white man, really, rather than anything else, which is seen as probably a bit abstract. And yeah, I found myself coming out multiple times since being here, and I've only been here this is my 3rd week, so it's quite a thing.
Well, Max, going forward, I suppose to save you the effort, you can just play people the podcast going forward, right? You can just kind of send them a link. and Royce, I don't know if you want to add anything to Max's thoughts on that.
Yeah, of course. I think with coming out, I think it's one of those things where, yeah, you do it at whatever age you kind of do that in your life. But I think it's just the whole coming out process, I think, can be such a difficult. Can be so difficult, whether it's at work or whether it's in your personal life. And I think it can have such a long-lasting effect with just how you approach, how you kind of approach a career and everything. So for me, kind of growing up in so I went to state school, and being a gay Asian man, I kind of felt like I definitely don't look and act like the people that I thought that were solicitors and were in the career that I wanted to enter into. And I think it's this element of kind of imposter syndrome where, and even to now, I still feel like, I still sometimes feel like I don't fit in, or it's going to be a hindrance in my career. But I think it's just about having the confidence and kind of speaking to your peers and understanding that it's not necessarily kind of it's a normal thing to feel. And I think this element of coming out is definitely something that I think once you kind of, if you're in a comfortable position to do so, and you're around people that you feel comfortable to do around, I think being your authentic self is definitely something that can help you feeling more comfortable in the workplace, and just feeling more comfortable in general with whatever you're doing.
I think it's a really important point that you raised about imposter syndrome, because I think, frankly, everyone walking through the doors of a law firm has some sense of imposter syndrome, or if they don't, they usually have an inflated kind of sense of arrogance. But I suppose LGBT, and also, as you said, somebody from a state school background, it's almost like a double whammy of how am I going to fit in. Now, I think law is very different to when I was doing my training contract back in 2000 and 9, there's certainly much broader focus on diversity, and you see a lot more diversity actually in law firms. But there is that point that a lot of people come in with this idea of how am I going to fit in, and what I've tended to find is the best people perform better when they feel comfortable, and where they feel that they can share themselves and be open about their lives. I'm openly gay at work, and I said to you guys earlier, I think the reason I think for a lot of it is because I want people coming into our firm at the junior level, say trainees, paralegals, on the support services, and seeing what we have here is a number of kind of openly out LGBT partners, and kind of going, and also partners from state school backgrounds, right? Where they can say, look, there's proof of concept. We can look above and see people who've come from backgrounds like ours, and actually perhaps coming out at work isn't going to be as significant as we thought, because frankly, if they're open and accepted at the kind of senior level, there's no reason why we can't be. Max, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about the idea of the kind of imposter syndrome, particularly with the kind of intersectionality with, I suppose, social mobility and LGBT issues.
Well, I think, like you've mentioned, both Stephen and Royce, obviously there is a preconceived idea of what a lawyer should be. I'm from Cornwall, and I went to a bad state school, I suppose you could say. And even then, I didn't know any lawyers or professional service people. But then when you go to university, you meet them and you think, great, maybe they are just like me. And like you've said, Stephen, they never really are. So it does then exacerbate everything, because you're a gay man at university, which you probably already don't think you fit in, or at least I didn't. I don't know about you, Royce. When I first got to uni, I was like, oh my god, this is a bit much. Like, everyone went to private school or grammar school, you didn't. Everyone seems straight, at least. Or like you said about golf and stuff earlier, Stephen, you don't do any of that, or never have, or couldn't afford it, at least. And then you finally get the job. So when you then see people that are open at work, like yourself, Stephen, in partnership, and did go to a state school, at least it can alleviate all problems with imposter syndrome, because you can finally think, I do fit in. But regardless of that, I suppose it stays with you forever, from the whole university journey to applying to jobs.
I want to come back to the idea of coming out multiple times, because Max made a really good point about actually you come out to your family, your friends, you come out at university. And it's something I suppose I don't really think that I thought about too much, because I've been lucky. There have been a number of firms which were very LGBT friendly. And I said there's been a huge change in the last 10 years. But one of the things is, as you get kind of more senior, suddenly you have client relationships. And a lot of it is, I suppose, coming out to your clients, which can be slightly daunting at first, because it's not so much that you're worried about any kind of adverse reaction, but it's that moment of terror when they say, what does your wife do? Or how, like, have you got kids? So those moments stay with you. So I suppose you do always have that kind of slight anxiety that comes with you and kind of trails in you. But I suppose what I've found is you get more used to realizing that it's just about educating people. There actually, a lot of the time, isn't really kind of any malice, and a lot of it can be very much internalized in terms of what you think people might think. We've spoken a lot about the idea of coming out multiple times. As I said, I think the last 10 years has seen a real change in how law firms approach diversity. Social mobility has become a much bigger thing than it ever was. Back when I was a trainee, I think I was one of the very few people that actually went to a state school, and I think the only kind of gay man in our trainee intake. It's certainly diversity is certainly a lot more visible. But one of the things we talk a lot about in law firms is kind of safe spaces and kind of equality of opportunity. I mean, Max, I suppose, what kind of tips, I suppose, do you have for firms in terms of creating a safe space for LGBT people to actually come out and actually share their lives in the same way that it feels that other people are able to do, without that kind of level of anxiety?
Well, I think things like this, for starters, make for a much more comfortable relationship with staff, and interrelationships between staff, because you don't feel the need to you don't feel the need to actually go looking for everything when it's already there. So you don't need to, there's not this like preconceived idea of, oh God, I've really got to search through the archives to find anything like LGBT handbook from 2015 or something, when in reality, Wendy, Holly, etc. keep the Instagram updated, they keep the Facebook groups updated, they keep just the internet updated. For example, last year, when I was even looking at, like, when I got my vacation scheme, I noticed that I think it was, well, would have been Wendy that uploaded like the allies pack, which included stuff about pronouns and stuff, which obviously in light of societal changes was great to see, because loads of other firms have neglected that part of the LGBT focus, which it wasn't based on trans lives, which obviously became massive last year with Trans Lives Matter. And yeah, just having those things, so podcasts or any interviews with people that are LGBT or out at work, at least, from all parts, like yourself, Stephen, being a partner, Royce being future trainee, me being paralegal. It's really, really important to cultivate a really happy place to work, I think, and then people will want to join the firm too, future talent.
I thought that's just to kind of quickly chip in. I think one point I wanted to come back to from earlier was that, you don't, sometimes you can feel that you're not really what a lawyer should be, or what is, which we can kind of unpack that another time. But what I found is being openly vocal about things and doing these podcasts is incredibly invaluable, and much more than just simply tweeting a rainbow flag, as we've discussed previously. And I think what it does is change the idea of people coming into our profession, be them kind of coming into the law side or kind of support service side, about what it means to be a lawyer, and slightly breaking down that kind of stereotype. But Royce, I don't know if you had some thoughts as well about, I suppose, tips and safe spaces and what firms can do, and other lawyers and people working within law firms can do.
No, so yeah, I completely agree with everything you guys have said. I think but one of the things I think is so important is just to listen. So if people are if people do come out in the workplace or whatever, I think just listening to people's stories and actually listening and taking in what they're saying, rather than kind of trying to change the course of their story, or add in your opinion or whatever. Like, if someone's being open enough to share something so important to them, to you, especially in the workplace, I think the worst thing to do is to make it about you, or to say things like, oh yeah, I knew that, I thought everyone knew that, or things like that. I think are so
I've got a gay
insensitive.
uncle. Amazing.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I've got a gay best friend or whatever, and I just think it's so insensitive, and I think it sets the wrong tone for the conversation. I think and I think people, and it only perpetuates why I think people struggle to come out with things like that, because if it's not about them, and it's not about whatever, it's about you feeling comfortable, and I think you should be in charge of having that narrative and sharing that narrative as you want to. So I think definitely listening is so key, with that piece. And also I think, just like we've all touched upon, kind of visibility, and having people talk about their experiences at different levels, and understanding that it's not just kind of the juniors at the firm that are kind of talking about change and wanting to talk about these issues, but it's kind of the senior management and partners, and just having the different levels in the hierarchy kind of expressing themselves and being their authentic selves. I think shows that really, if people at different levels can feel comfortable talking about this and being themselves, then I think it's a pretty good sign for the business, and for people kind of looking on an outsider's perspective, that if it's kind of ingrained within the culture, then it's definitely something that is authentic, and kind of is going to be present for all people in business. So just being vocal about that and having that visibility is so important.
I think you're absolutely right when you say about listening. I mean, my experience is, you tell people you're gay and they rush in with some kind of anecdote about themselves, and it's not with I don't think there's any kind of malicious intent or any intent to I think a lot of it is people trying to create a sense of, don't worry, I'm not shocked, or I'm not, in any way offended or appalled. They're trying to kind of create a comfort zone, which actually I think, frankly, sometimes doesn't go down the right way. But I completely agree with in terms of listening. It comes back to a point that we mentioned previously about, I suppose, LGBT issues in kind of, large firms, where a lot of it is about, tweeting or kind of, Instagram, which I think is great, right? In terms of putting out a profile there and showing that the firm has a knowledge of and an interest in LGBT issues. But a lot of it is kind of bringing it back to basics and actually just listening to LGBT people and their experiences without the kind of more kind of, I suppose, commercialized overlay. Max, you look like you're about to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I agree with what you're saying, because if there's, well, not every gay person, but every gay person has a shared experience in the fact that they have had to come out at one point in time, whether it's at the end of their career, like you saw, like, for example, Philip Schofield coming out so late in his life, or whether it's like myself coming out at 16. Doesn't matter, you did have to come out. But for example, with these personal or anecdotal experiences that we're giving today on a podcast or interviews, it can just help people, either new joiners that are young, coming out of university like myself, yourself, Stephen, trying to find partnership in a different firm, or career changes, no matter what age they are. And that's much more important. Like, it's so much more important. It's so much more useful and intuitive of the firm, like you said, in a business development point of view. That's what the business needs. It's clients don't want to see a stagnant law firm. They want to see change, and that keeps up with societal changes and rifts in society.
I remember years and years and years ago, when I was a trainee, a partner, when I was a funds trainee, asked me to go for a coffee with a paralegal from a trade organization, and she was a young Muslim woman who was wearing the veil, and the idea was, let's do a favor for this kind of, this kind of trade body, just have a coffee with her. And I suppose I mentored her over the last 10 years. We're really good friends now. And I remember her saying to me, again, let's go back to 2009. No, 2011. I look around the city and there's no one who looks like me. And I thought, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I understand the anxiety that comes with that. I said, but also therein lies a bit of power as well. In fact, you will probably have a way to connect with clients and other people in a way that probably other people don't. So what I suppose one of the ways, I suppose, in which the world has changed is, I'm a private equity lawyer. I do fund formation. The British Venture Capital Association, a big trade body, has LGBT specific networking events, which I think is great in terms of going to a networking event without feeling that you have to come out again. You're in a safe space, but also being able to connect with people who've got a shared lived experience, as you were saying, Max, and actually seeing it as I don't want to say as a positive thing, because it is a positive thing, but as something where actually it can be instrumental for your career, in the way that perhaps in the past, LGBT people have not really been able to use their identity for their career progression, because there's not been the same kind of collectivity of LGBT people working in kind of similar areas. But I think one of the points we were discussing earlier about in terms of making safe spaces is, I think firms and lawyers and financial services have got really, really good at taking a step back and thinking, actually, we're going to put on an event. How inclusive is this, particularly in the context of gender? Particularly in areas which are traditionally more kind of heteronormative, such as banking, corporate, etc. I suppose my thought is, I still find that a lot of events, for client development in kind of private equity and funds, are still very heteronormative. They're still where, without much intention, you do feel slightly excluded, because you might not want to play golf or watch the cricket, etc. So I think part of it is also all the time stepping back and thinking, actually, how can I make this an event where LGBT people can also network and progress their careers in a good way, and don't feel that they're being pressurized into having to effectively out themselves if they don't feel comfortable, or be in a situation where actually they don't have much interest. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that at the more kind of junior level.
I think it's No, I completely agree. I think it kind of boils down to kind of make like no one should feel pressure to kind of to have to come out, be in the workplace or their private life, and it should be dictated on their terms rather than kind of doing it in a way in which they feel outed or whatever. Like, I mean, I'm guilty of it myself, where I get asked what I have to self-censor certain things because of who I'm around, and I know I'm in a safe space, but I'll say things like partner rather than boyfriend or whatever, and it's so. I think it's again, and I know that I'm in a safe space where I can outwardly talk about me and my boyfriend or whatever, but I think it's that niggling thing in the back of my head where it's like you have to self-censor yourself, and you never know who's around, or you never know what people are going to say or whatever. But I think it's having the confidence to talk about it, and I think and I don't want to say the word normalize, but I guess kind of normalize having those talking about and having those discussions with people, just regardless of whether who you're around, or if you're in front of clients and things like that. So I think it's just kind of it's a slow kind of journey to get there, but I think it's if you kind of actively check yourself and take the steps to to kind of having that confidence. I think it's gonna hopefully be a easier thing to discuss in the future.
I completely agree, and I think we talk about coming out multiple times, but I don't think what we talk about is the fact that many times we also come in. You've been out at university, at law school, and I think a lot of people come to being lawyers and they come back in to the closet because they're not sure that when they come out again, there's almost that trepidation, as you say, you self-censor of how things are going to be achieved. I refer to my boyfriend all the time, because I want people to know that actually there's a partner here who's in a same-sex relationship, and a bit like Schitt's Creek, no one's going to make an issue of it. It's just it's a fact of life. And what I found is throughout my career, I've had a number of times where I felt a bit anxious about referring to my boyfriend, rather to clients actually, and frankly, when I was an associate, to more senior partners, without any feeling that they were going to be difficult about it. But it's that kind of anxiety that you hold in you. I've been lucky actually, maybe because I've ignored it or haven't kind of brooked any kind of negative feeling, but I've always had a very good reaction from clients, and I think clients also now seem to be waking up to the idea of having diverse teams of lawyers on thing. One of the things I think I struggle is I don't look particularly diverse as a kind of a white cisgender man. You wouldn't ever think gay man from a statistical background, but I think the idea of, I suppose, coming in and out throughout your career is kind of not really discussed enough, right?
No way, it's not talked about enough at all. But then that's when it also interlinks with the intersectionality point of, as I've mentioned to Wendy previously, well, Wendy and Royce, you come out as socially mobile through these events as well, whatever the law firm might hold for clients. Because if you admit that you haven't ever played golf, it's not just admitting, oh, I've never had an interest in golf. It's, oh, actually, I haven't had them since I was 5 years old, like most people, and I haven't got my own. I didn't just buy a new 9 club for £500 or something on the weekend. So it's much more broader, isn't it, than coming in and then coming out as just gay. It's everything else about your life and how that's made your journey. And like Roy said, it's your narrative, and that's why it's important. So when the firm then listens and clients want diverse lawyers, it cultivates more effective client and lawyer relationship.
Yeah, I've got no idea what a 9 club is, by the way. So well done to you, Max, for kind of introducing.
It's actually a 9 iron, isn't it? I'm not a 9 club.
Close enough there, close enough. But it's I think it's great that we've got like a national coming out day. But I think I suppose the point which I kind of reiterate is that people out every day. That it's great that we have this focus one day, and actually it's a good opportunity kind of to speak openly about it. But I think one of the things we need to do as a firm, as an industry, is keep on being vocal, I don't think that requires people to be out at all. I think it's a personal choice, but I think, you know, if you feel safe enough and you're comfortable enough to be out in the workplace, I think it's a really beautiful thing. And I've always felt a responsibility to more junior people to be out, in the same way that I suppose LGBT people, you know, 10 years ago, I suppose felt towards me and towards other LGBT people. So it's great that we have a chance to discuss this and to kind of bring opinions. And we've spoken ad nauseum about the fact that, you know, a lot of firms really focus on pride nowadays, but I think where the value comes in, and hopefully for people who are listening to this who perhaps are thinking about coming out or wondering if Squires is a place where actually they can come out and be authentic and talk about their lives in the same way other people can. I think these kind of personal anecdotes are incredibly important. And frankly, we just didn't have this when I was going through my training contract. And I really, really wish I did, because I feel that it would have made my kind of professional coming out as a trainee that bit more easy, I suppose. But as you, so Royce, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think, yeah, it's so important to ensure that, like, when I start training, I kind of want to represent. I want to represent the things that I feel as though weren't represented, or that I didn't see growing up. I didn't see people of color who went to state school and who are openly gay, and I think it's so important that, as I'm crafting my own career for myself, I want to make sure that I'm visible for someone else, or whatever, like, because I think when you come from different marginalized groups, or whether you're a minority, I think it's so, even within the LGBT plus community, I think there's still like diversity issues, and I think there's still, like, and I think, as a person of color, I think it's so important that kind of having that perspective, and having all the other things that make me who I am. I think it's so important to share that story and kind of talk about it vocally, because it's what makes me different. But I think I'm obviously not the only person that feels the same way, or has opinions like this. So making sure that we talk about it and have that safe space to encourage discussions and have the other people talking about that, I think is amazing, to cultivate the ongoing discussions of this.
And Max, you're kind of, not that people will see this on the podcast, but you're nodding profusely, which is great. So I don't know if you have any kind of those closing remarks.
Just to piggyback off what Royce said, I think the ongoing discussion that's the best thing, isn't it? People like us, if we did this even twice a year, if it was National Coming Out Day and then just for Pride Month, whatever, but it's Global Diversity, is it month? I think Wendy said month. It's Global Diversity Month. Talking about intersectionality in the ongoing discussion is the only way that businesses like this, or across the board, no matter if it's Tesco or Squires, like every business needs it, and it's the only way that every bit of the diversity issues that you mentioned, Royce, can actually be ironed out, and it's fun. So people want to listen to it, I hope, and people will actually learn something.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I suppose one closing remark is, when I was looking at a couple of firms to join the partnership at, you know, I thought a lot about things. And, you know, one thing I think I put top of my list was culture, which sounds like a very kind of, you know, vague concept. And certainly 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been, I suppose, the height of mine. But, you know, it was about, you know, how do firms value social mobility? What are they actually doing? And actually looking at the activities in terms of LGBT issues and social mobility, rather than just the pure rhetoric of it. And I came across a YouTube interview with one of our senior associates in Manchester, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And as someone joining as a partner, thinking, actually, I'm going to have to come out as gay. And again, it's, you know, the millionth time I've done it, so it's not the same thing. But simply having that kind of interview was great, and actually really showing me that this firm is fantastic and committed to diversity, LGBT issues, to kind of racial equality, to social mobility, and it really makes a difference. So thank you both very, very much for sharing your experiences and spending your time. And I couldn't agree more. I think being vocal, I think it is power. And I think, and I hope anyone listening to this will hopefully see that this is a firm where you can be openly LGBT. It is a safe space, but hopefully provide you also with some tips that we've learned from our own experiences about coming out, the millions of times it seems that we have done over the last number of years. So with that, thank you very much.